was February 2nd, 1967. Walt Disney had died back in December. There was a new government in town in the state of Florida, new governor, and Claude Kirk had been sworn in as the governor of Florida just a month or so before. The Walt Disney Company had an interest in promoting Walt's vision for Epcot and trying to establish a means to move it forward. And one of the critical things that Walt had figured out was that they needed to create a special improvement district. Now, a special improvement district is a way to allow for the government of a community or an area to have control over that land. So in that 47 square miles that Walt had laid out and purchased the land for, they wanted to have complete authority over that land and its land planning use and the things they would do and be exempt from local government whims and even the state of Florida's whims in the general sense. So they pitched the idea to the state of Florida. And where did they do that? Why, right here. This building right behind me where you see the LA Fitness, that actually used to be the Winter Garden Theater 1 and 2. And back on February 2nd, 1967, they actually came there and presented Walt's video, that 16-minute film that you see of Walt Disney talking about Epcot and the other pieces that are built in there. They presented it right there. So that was a really interesting place. It has a historical significance to Disney. You have to consider that, at the time, without Walt Disney World being there, there really wasn't a place, a theater to host such an event. So where am I? I'm about 20 miles northeast of Orlando in the city of Winter Park. There were luminaries and dignitaries and all kinds of state representatives from the state of Florida, as well as Don Tatum, Roy Disney, representatives from RCA, from US Steel, and others who went into the theater to actually hear the pitch. And Roy Disney kicked it off talking about Walt's vision, and then they showed the film. And whether it was actually a heart grab, tugging at your heartstrings because Walt had recently died, or whether it was an actual attempt by Disney to try and sell something that they really wanted, I'm not really sure. It's you get kind of conflicting viewpoints on this because Walt Disney was the icon and he had recently died, so it was the right moment to strike. But did they strike just because it was the right moment, or did they strike because they really had a vision for what Walt Disney World would be, or were they just being corporate in nature and just figuring out how to essentially fleece the local government? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. My presumption is that they had something better in mind and they had some idea and this was a positive thing. But in any event, this is the site where the film actually happened. And I just find it interesting. It's no longer a theater. For a long time it was a theater until about 2005 or 6 or something like that. And then they closed it down as a theater. But all the time it was a theater. They always had marquees up, information about it being the place where Walt Disney talked about his vision for Epcot. And I find that really interesting. It's just another historical piece.
Welcome to a little bit of Florida here in California. This is where the early planning is taking place for our so-called Disney World project. Now, the purpose of this film is to bring you up to date about some of the plans for Disney World. But before I go into any of the details, I want to say just a word about the site of our Florida project. As you can see on this map, we have a perfect location in Florida, almost in the very center of the state. In fact, we selected this site because it's so easy for tourists and Florida residents to get here by automobile. Now, in larger scale on this map, our Florida land is located partly in Orange County and Osceola County, between the cities of Orlando and Kissimmee. And the important thing is that the Disney World is located just a few miles from the crossing point of Interstate 4 and Sunshine State Parkway, Florida's major highways carrying motors east and west and north and south to the center of the state. The sketches and plans you will see today are simply a starting point, our first overall thinking about Disney World, California. We're now developing a master plan that encompasses the theme park and all the facilities around it that will serve the tourists. Hotels, motels, and a variety of recreation activities. In fact, just this little area alone is 5 times the size of Disneyland in California. But as you can see on this master plan, the theme park and all the other tourist facilities fill just one small area of our enormous Florida project. According to this scale, I am 6 miles tall. Now that's 12 miles from here up to here, and the whole area encompasses 27,400 acres. That is 43 square miles, twice the size of the island of Manhattan. Now, the area we propose to develop is between the Reedy Creek Swamp and the Bonnet Creek Swamp. So one thing we don't need is a fence to protect us from trespassers. Here in Florida, we have something special we never enjoyed at Disneyland, the blessing of size. There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine.
And if we look at how the property is laid out, the original drawings by Walt fit onto the property pretty nicely. The entrance is along World Drive at the bottom of the map, and the Magic Kingdom is at the far end. And Epcot wound up being in the research park area right about where he had planned for it if we lay the map on top of it. It is pretty neat how it worked out. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about special districts and what was in mind there as far as what the plan was. Now, as I mentioned in episode 4, Disney was able to petition the Ninth Circuit Court to be able to create the Reedy Creek Drainage District. This is a special case of a special improvement district, but Disney always knew that their plans for the land would be easier to carry out with more independence. So at this meeting at the Theater in Winter Park, they formally petitioned the state legislature for the creation of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, which is a special improvement district, which would have almost total autonomy over the area that was within the Disney property. Governor Claude Kirk was swayed along with most of the legislature, and so Governor Kirk signed into law Chapter 67-764 of Florida law, which created the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Now, at the same time, they were also swayed to create and incorporate two cities within that district, one called Bay Lake, which was created with Chapter 67-1104, and Reedy Creek, which was created with Chapter 67-1965. Now, in 1970 or so, the city of Reedy Creek was renamed the city of Lake Buena Vista through a vote. Now, during the press conference part of the meeting, Don Tatum said the improvement district and the cities were created to serve, quote, the needs of those residing there, and the company needed its own government to clarify the district's authority to provide services within the district's limits. And because of the public nature of the planned development, the original city boundaries did not cover the whole improvement district, but they may have been intended as areas where communities would be built for people to live. Remember that at the time they were having this meeting, Walt had just died, and so they still had in mind to do the same things and build the experimental prototype city. The improvement district has far-reaching powers. Disney could construct almost anything within its borders, including a nuclear power plant. The district, as with many municipal corporations, can issue tax-free bonds for internal improvements. This has been a point of contention over the years. The other power the district was given was an exemption to state zoning and land use laws. When the state later established the development of regional impact study process, Disney, through the district, was able to avoid the paperwork and streamline the process to build the theme park and other attractions. On the other hand, county taxes, including property and sales taxes, still apply within the district. And, of course, they have to allow for various types of inspections, including federal inspections. Now, as we know, the residential areas never came through in the district. And I think the biggest problem here probably had to do with the fact that having people live there gives them certain rights. And you can't take away those rights from people, so they would be able to control some of what Disney was doing within their property of Lake Buena Vista. Now, just in summary, the district has some very specific services that they offer, that they provide Disney: fire protection, environmental protection, building codes and land use planning, including the Epcot Building Code. They provide utilities and roads. So that's a quick synopsis of all of the things that were granted to them under these state laws that allowed them to create the two cities and the Reedy Creek Improvement District that encompassed those two cities. Now, because it's a special improvement district, they do have to have a voting board that resides there, and the way they do that is to have a 5-member board of supervisors govern the district, elected by the landowners in the district. Now, how do they have landowners there? Well, they actually have 23 residents that are in the community of Bay Lake and about 16 residents that are in the community of Lake Buena Vista. It's kind of a fascinating piece of history and an unusual sort of maneuver that Disney used in order to get control of their property.